And here's a big development coming in. According to Ukrainian media, Zelensky has agreed with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz for an urgent meeting of the G7. This is in the wake of the aggression by the Russians and the escalation of an 8-month-long war. Abhishek is with us on the broadcast. Abhishek, how crucial could be this step?
So we have known that this war that is being fought between Russia and Ukraine. One side is clearly Russia, another side Ukraine is broadly a front. But behind Ukraine, there is a lot of force of NATO allies and G7 countries and the Western bloc of Europe as well. So when Zelensky is seeking an urgent meeting of G7, it's clearly in a step towards mounting more pressure on Russia in the wake of latest aggression that Russia has sent across Ukraine, dropping missiles at various cities and hitting civilian targets. So this is clearly a message that Zelensky wants to send across, that he still enjoys a lot of support from G7 countries and NATO allies as well. And also this is coming at the time when United Nations General Assembly is also convening at the request of United States of America to discuss this Russia-Ukraine conflict, which will also have probably the voting scenario where the Russian action could be possibly condemned, but we'll have to see how the various countries are going to act and take sides during the resolution. But Zelensky, while the forces of Ukraine are trying to reclaim all the lost territories in the hands of Russian forces, Zelensky is also trying to bolster all the diplomatic and political support he has had in the past, and to showcase in a message of his strength that he still enjoys that support from the countries, and they still do a lot of economic coercion and other sanctions and other steps that can be taken in direction to force Russia to withdraw its aggression from the current Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Abhishek, if we were to take a stock of the last 8 months and try and understand to what extent the international soft pressure has been crucial or critical in containing the actions by the Russians, has it really had any kind of substantial impact on the ground? Because if one looks at the manner in which the Russians have conducted themselves, they haven't really given heed to any kind of warnings or any kind of posturings coming in from the likes of US or the G7 or NATO.
Of course, in fact, there has been always this diplomatic tiff going on between Russia and the West. And we know that currently what is playing in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, is not limited to that area. This is playing at a much wider scale and a global geopolitical area as well, which is, and experts are talking it as a second most unstable arena after the Cold War of 60s and 70s. So clearly, this is a fight between Russia and the erstwhile forces of USA and NATO, where the Ukraine is obviously Ukraine is feeling the first-hand brunt of the Russian forces. Also, the Ukraine, the divide is happening in Europe as well because of the energy crisis and the approaching winter. Because Russian Nord Stream gas that used to supply a lot of gas and that used to feed the energy need of Europe is now not supplying as much of gas, and the dependence of Ukraine on Russian energy has been one of the key stake that Russia has always enjoyed whenever it had thought of having a conflict with Europe. And that is one pressure that Russia is trying to play out with the rising cost of fuel prices across the globe and limiting the supply of fuel as well to the European nation. And how the people of Europe is going to play out with that in the coming few weeks, because the winter is almost there on the doors, that will decide how the political support to the Ukraine-Russia conflict will be coming from the European side. So maybe Russian side is watching before it could take final decision in this conflict a few more weeks, when actually the winter will hit Europe, and the people of those European countries will be out and about expressing their opinion about rising inflation, rising fuel costs, rising food costs, and then how the political dispensation in those countries will take
Abhishek, and that takes me to another very important facet, apart from the geopolitical concerns or Russian administration and the Ukrainian administration, is the humanitarian crisis, which is looming out in Ukraine, and it has been going on for the last 8 months. As the winter approaches, it could get worse because the climatic conditions are all the more difficult for people, and the midst of all of that, bombing in a war will make it highly difficult for people living in the war-hit areas. The humanitarian crisis, to what extent the international organizations have taken cognizance of it? To what extent have they really come out and helped the Ukrainians in dealing with this crisis?
So this is one area which has had unequivocal support from all community across the globe, ranging from India, China, and other parts of the world as well. In fact, India has always maintained that cessation of hostilities should be there and humanitarian assistance to all those who have been hit with this conflict raging up in the parts of Ukraine and Russia should be provided maximum humanitarian assistance. And we know as there has been crisis of food, fuel, energy is very much necessary to live in those conditions because the approaching winter we will have a temperature falling below minus 10 and 20. Needs hot water and hot sheltering also. And the people who have lost their home, people who have lost their means to survive and livelihoods, they need a lot of monetary support, food supplies, tents, warm clothes. So every humanitarian support is required to assist them to live and fare through this winter. And how world community is going to do that we'll have to see, because this is one area where there is a unanimity that all those victims of war should be provided humanitarian assistance in, and that can happen leading with the United Nations agency leading from the front, and all the countries across the globe providing relief materials to the
Abhishek Jha continues to be with us on the broadcast. My colleague Sanjay Suri is